What's happening, everybody? Been away for a bit putting stuff out on the channel, but it's the end of July. Players are reporting to training camp. The season is close. It's time to talk ball a little bit more consistently. So with that said, welcome to Face Mask Fantasy. Welcome to, I guess, the start of the 2025 live stream schedule that I'll be keeping for the duration of the 2025 season. Kicking things off with running back rankings today. We've got the top 12 rankings, my top 12 rankings anyway, for the upcoming year. So we'll get into all of those rankings. We'll react to the latest news from around the NFL, from around the league, as players report. And if we have some time, and if anybody is interested, I can kick off a best ball and talk about that draft and as it develops real time. Just for some fun, practice ahead of the season. So plenty to talk about as I start to make this a more regular occurrence. With us about 6 weeks away from the start of football, Tuesdays and Thursdays, I intend to make that a regular occurrence for the next month and a half before we move back to the 4 streams per week cadence during the season, when I include Saturday and Sunday streams for start, sit, help. So, welcome back. If you have been here before, welcome for the first time. If it is your first time coming across this channel, the objective is simple. It's the same as anybody else that runs a fantasy football platform. Help you try to find an edge and win some championships. So we'll get into everything. I'll start with latest news. As always, we'll take questions as well as they come up. If you've been here before, you know the drill, but I will remind everybody, for those that are new, members will get priority responses to their questions. That is a perk of being a member of the channel. If you are feeling generous enough to send a super, you don't have to, but if you choose to, that will also be a line jumper to get your question answered, or a gift in general. And then I will get to any other questions that pop up. So all you have to do is subscribe. But if you are not a member and you don't send a super, your questions will be answered after those 2 prerequisites, so to speak. And details about memberships are they should be in the body of the description of this live stream and any stream and video on the channel. Try to keep prices low. Not asking for the world, ideally, hopefully. So hopefully it's something that is within a range that it may be of interest to you, to fast track any questions that you may have, any information that you may be looking to get. Because when push comes to shove, when it's crunch time, and you have a decision to make, you're more likely to hear from me earlier in a stream than later in the stream, with priority response time. That being said, let's get into it. What's going on, Greg? Good to see you. Hopefully summer's going well. Winter, summer, spring, all those seasons where we either sort of or outright don't have football. Good to see you back. So with that, let's get into, I guess, the latest news that we have as players are reporting today, all this week. Some teams, a couple teams, Chargers are one that have been in camp now for a little bit longer as they get ready for the Hall of Fame game, because believe it or not, that game is next week. So just looking at the ticker. Let's see what we got. Okay, I will just go through a couple of these items, line by line. I'll give a couple of thoughts, and then we can keep it moving. Starting with this developed yesterday, so I'll start. Look at some stuff that happened last evening, and just kind of give some brief thoughts here. Nyheim Hines signed a deal with the Chargers. He's been out of football for a little while after suffering, I believe it was a jet ski accident. I think that was last year. So Hines returns to the NFL on a deal with the Chargers. Obviously, a 1 year, probably low cost, incentive laden deal. Very few guarantees type of contract with Los Angeles. This, and I will sort of get into this when we get into the running back rankings. There could be something brewing here with what's going on with Najee Harris. Again, I will get into that. But the fact that the Chargers are working out running backs and are not really shedding a ton of light into what is going on with Najee Harris. There's some stuff to unpack here. Do I think Nyheim Hines is fantasy relevant this year? No. But I do think his signing is something that is, there's a larger story here, and we'll get into all of that. Stefon Diggs, Patriots wide receiver Stefon Diggs, cleared for full participation in training camp. So there was initial concern earlier this offseason that Diggs may not be ready for the start of the season after he suffered a torn ACL last year with Houston. He's getting a little bit older, but he was tracking to have a pretty good year with the Texans before he suffered the injury. I think he was on pace for over 1,000 yards receiving, which, when you're catching passes alongside Nico Collins and a healthy Tank Dell, that's pretty good. But now he is the clear-cut top wide receiver for Drake May and the New England Patriots. His clearance to fully participate right from the jump is a great sign for his availability for week 1. I think his ADP is a little too low right now, and that might sort of be baked into what was initially some concern about whether he would be available week 1 or not. This is a positive sign. I would move Diggs up my board a spot or two, depending on your league's scoring and the format that you use. Obviously, ADP is different everywhere, depending on the platform you play on. But Diggs looking good for the start of camp. I would bump him up a little bit in rankings as a clear-cut wide receiver 1 who should get a wide receiver 1 target share, even though he's older at this point and maybe not as dynamic as he once was. James Cook is reporting to Bills training camp, but I believe the last I saw is he will be holding in. Let's see if I can get a more recent update. That was from yesterday. I believe it was, I think it was announced earlier that he will not participate just yet in team activities. There's a couple of guys that we'll get into about whose story is similar to this or somewhat adjacent to it. So maybe I'm remembering somebody else, but at least James Cook is in Bills camp. He is seeking a new contract. He wants to be paid more money after he scored, I believe it was 16 touchdowns for the Buffalo Bills last year. Now the contract situation is at the forefront of conversations and not necessarily just the focus of football activities. We've seen this affect guys in the past. James Cook is somebody who right now, I believe, has a 4th-round ADP in best ball drafts, which means he's probably more of a late 2nd, early 3rd-round pick in your redraft league. For me, that's a fade. Simply because I do not envision a world where James Cook scores 16 touchdowns again. That's a bit of an outlier considering his previous, his previous touchdown output in past seasons. He was never really a big touchdown scorer prior to last year, and then he spiked all the way up to 16, some of which may have been Stefon Diggs moves on from Buffalo to Houston at the time. They move on from Gabe Davis. So, maybe the passing volume comes down a little bit. James Cook gets a little bit more work. all that to say, he ended up with a massive touchdown number, more of an outlier than his previous couple of seasons. Yeah, he had 2 rushing touchdowns. James Cook did he had 2 rushing touchdowns each in 2022 and 2023. He did get 4 receiving touchdowns in 2023 to boost his total touchdown number to 6, but that's not a huge number. And then he goes all the way up to 18 total touchdowns, 16 on the ground. So he got 16 alone on the ground and then another 2 through the air. So 18 total touchdowns after in his first 2 seasons of the league, he accumulated 9 total, 9 over 2 years, and then doubles that in 1 year. James Cook is a guy that he should still be he should lead the Bills' backfield in opportunities by a sizable margin. But Ray Davis showed a little something last year. I think he's a pretty good player, a pretty good change of pace player, who could theoretically handle a larger role if need be. And that could come to fruition if Cook has to miss time or if he gets off to a slow start because of this, because of the distraction caused by wanting a new contract. We've seen this happen before. So James Cook is a fade for me at cost right now. I do not expect him to replicate 18 total touchdowns again. So, if he's if he's around the 2-3 turn in your redraft league, late second, early third, there's other running backs I'd rather have a little earlier than him that I'd rather invest in and then target wide receiver around where James Cook is going. The potential for a hold-in even further confirms my concerns that I will not draft too many shares of James Cook this year. Tyreek Hill says he feels back to being himself. No pain, no complaints about his surgically repaired wrist that hampered him throughout the season last year, in addition to Miami's issues on offense and obviously the well-documented situation with Tua and his concussion history, them kind of moving to a more check-down offense where Tua was just getting the ball out as fast as he could to Devon Achane and Jonnu Smith, and Tyreek Hill took a hit and Jalen Waddle took a massive hit. Neither one of them returned anything close to their value as far as where they were being drafted ADP-wise. They both cratered out. There is a little bit more optimism for both this year. We, of course, have a healthy offseason for Tua, presumably. He needs to better protect himself on a play-by-play basis. Whether that happens remains to be seen. But Tyreek himself claims to be healthy. And again, they traded Jonnu to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Miami did. So, I think the writing was on the wall for them. They understood this style of offense is not helping them. As awesome as Jonnu was last year, statistically, they weren't a great offense because they weren't pushing the ball down the field and scoring enough points. I mean, Jonnu was putting up huge numbers, but it was actually coming at a detriment to Miami's offense as a whole. They need to be able to score to put up points to beat the good teams that they have. So, it's well documented at this point. Miami has struggled mightily against the superior, better competition. They beat bad teams and they lose to good teams. They're a mediocre team. They're going to need Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on offense if they have any shot at competing in 2025. It's going to have to come in the form of their skill position guys, their elite playmakers. So Tyreek right now is getting drafted around the 3rd or 4th round in redraft leagues. He's a little bit more of a higher 3rd round pick in best ball, with the emphasis on that 3rd starting wide receiver spot. But in redraft, he's a little bit more of like a 3-4 turn guy. He's a polarizing guy, right? If you believe in Tyreek Hill, he hasn't lost a step, then you may consider him a value there. Others may look at the fact that he's entering his age 31 season and dealt with injuries, and therefore want to shy away. I personally don't mind taking the shot on Tyreek Hill. I'm not fading Tyreek Hill. The concern, I think, is baked into his ADP. So in this situation, I feel like we're drafting Tyreek closer to his floor than his ceiling, and therefore I'm in. Like James Cook, who I just got done talking about, I think we're drafting him closer to his ceiling than his floor. So I'm a little bit more out on James Cook. With Tyreek, even though he's a little bit older, I think we're drafting him closer to his floor than his ceiling. Therefore, I'm personally okay with taking a shot on him. Let's see. Anthony Richardson, this is a fun one. The Colts quarterback situation is set to open training camp with only volume restrictions. That is the headline. So I guess he can throw, but they'll be cautious, I guess, with how much they put on his plate. That being said, Anthony Richardson needs the reps. Daniel Jones is not your future, and maybe Anthony Richardson isn't either. But if you're the Indianapolis Colts, you need to be able to see what the 4th overall pick in the draft from a couple of years ago can do as he continues to get more reps, more experience, more work, the work that he so desperately needs. It's so, it's been hammered home at this point that the lack of experience while in college, we had to kind of go into the Anthony Richardson experiment knowing he's probably going to need time to develop into a consistent NFL starter, and he just quite hasn't had that opportunity yet with Indianapolis. It's been a combination of he suffered a season-ending injury his rookie campaign, and then last year he was in and out of the lineup for a slew of reasons, not just injury concerns. So, I guess the fact that he only has volume restrictions is a little bit better than the standard, we're bringing him along slowly. Maybe he starts on the PUP list. That's not the case. Either way, the Colts quarterback situation is gross. One of those guys might turn out to be a fantasy value, whether it's Jones or Richardson. But this feels headed to a situation where they alternate starts throughout the year, and neither one of them finds any level of consistency because, one bad outing or a bad outing and a half, and all of a sudden the other guy gets put in, and maybe he plays well for a little bit, but then he doesn't play well for another stretch, and then they put the other guy in. I feel like we could be looking at, musical chairs at quarterback for the Colts this year, and that's not going to help anybody. And it would be especially, I think, continuous damaging of Anthony Richardson's any potential trajectory of an upward trend that he could possibly have. It's a gross situation. Kyren Williams reports to Rams training camp, and he will not hold in. This is significant. Kyren Williams intends to practice during Rams training camp, even though he is also looking for a contract from the team. He's looking to get paid a little bit more of what he feels he's worth after a couple of stellar RB1 fantasy seasons in 2023 and 2024. Kyren, though, will be practicing, getting his reps in, getting his work in, getting his opportunities with the first team offense atop the depth chart where he belongs. The Rams need him. They have Super Bowl aspirations. Don't necessarily know where the contract situation plays out. They seem to like him. The Rams do. So, ideally, that situation gets resolved. Obviously, all contract situations we ideally want resolved before the start of the season. But Kyren is being drafted as an RB1, not a borderline RB1, an RB1. So we want him in camp. Dynasty managers, redraft managers, those who are taking him in the 3rd round in redraft leagues with high expectations that he can be an RB1 or a good RB2 if you go hero, or if you go robust RB to start your draft. We need that situation resolved. So one to monitor, but one that I think is a little bit more optimistic because Kyren is practicing. He is not holding out or holding in. Matthew Stafford will be held out of most workouts during the first 5 days of Rams training camp. Stafford is 37, 38 years old at this point. I would chalk that up to, exactly what it sounds like. Veteran rest, nothing to be worried about. 49ers wide receiver Ricky Pearsall is likely to come off the PUP list within the first few days of 49ers training camp after suffering a minor hamstring injury. Hopefully that's all it is. It's minor, and the 49ers are taking things slowly and cautiously. It is fair to question how much we trust the 49ers after everything that went down last year. They were notoriously inaccurate with their medical information shared with the media, most notably with Christian McCaffrey. Not really leading on until basically season start that McCaffrey had serious injury issues that he was dealing with. So it's fair to question the 49ers and how accurate their information is when it comes to injuries. They say Pearsall should come off the PUP list in the next couple of days. We'll see what happens. If you find yourself with 49ers players, or 49ers players are around where you are drafting in the draft, just do your extra due diligence, do a little extra homework, follow the beat reporters. Matt Mayoko is I think the one that has the most reputable reputation there. So just keep things plugged in. If you're looking at Christian McCaffrey, if you're looking at Ricky Pearsall, if you're looking at Jawan Jennings, there were questions about whether he was requesting there were rumors, whispers, he was requesting a trade because he was unhappy with his contract situation. Brandon Ayuk is obviously coming back from a major injury. So, his timeline is up in the air. It's fair to be wary of the 49ers and their injury information. So if you want to completely avoid any potential headaches and just not target 49ers players in general, I mean, McCaffrey, we'll get to him in my running back rankings. George Kittle's a stud tight end, maybe, with no injury concerns coming into the season. Maybe don't worry about those guys, but anybody else, it's fair to have a little bit of caution around that situation. Taysom Hill and Foster Moreau placed on the PUP list for the New Orleans Saints. Taysom Hill could be a cap casualty after suffering that torn ACL late in the season last year. That is a team that is very much going through a rebuild. They are very much moving with a youth movement. That being said, Jawan Johnson is an excellent dart throw at the end of deeper drafts if you do end up punting on tight end. If you do not get a tight end early on, one of the studs at the position, one of my ideal late round targets, even though there's question marks about the whole situation and the offense and who the quarterback's going to be, it's going to be Tyler Shuck, but how good is he as a second round pick, is starting as a rookie day one, with no real veteran presence in the locker room to kind of help him along, at least in the quarterback room. His backups are Spencer Rattler and Jake Hayner. So Shuck is going to need to rely heavily on the coaching staff, Kellen Moore, and the like, to get caught up to speed at the NFL level. Maybe Jawan Johnson presents a solid big body check down option for him. Tight ends are typically a young quarterback's best friend. We say this type of stuff around draft time all the time. Jawan Johnson, I think, is a rock solid late round flyer at tight end if you punt the position, especially with Taysom Hill and Foster Moreau on the PUP list. Zach Moss placed on the NFI list. So, wheels up on Chase Brown. Obviously, a lot of people are going to be interested in Taj Brooks, the Bengals rookie draft pick at running back this year. I would say if you are in deep leagues, or maybe you have Chase Brown, or you're targeting Chase Brown and you want to make sure you get his handcuff at all costs, which is always a decently sound strategy, is getting a running back that you invest heavily in, getting that guy's backup. Keep Samaje Perine in mind. He's boring. He doesn't offer a ton, but he is the veteran presence on a Bengals team that, they had a disappointing year last year. They want to compete for the playoffs. Obviously, they want to compete for a Super Bowl, but with a guy like Joe Burrow at quarterback, you expect to make the playoffs no matter what. So in that instance, it's not uncommon or unfair to expect them to lean on veteran players over rookies, especially rookies that are drafted later in the draft. So I would keep in mind, a guy like Perine with Zach Moss on the NFI list. This is for deeper leagues. Terry McLaurin did not report to Commanders training camp. Another contract situation to monitor, except this one is specifically a holdout. Terry McLaurin holding out as of day one of Washington Commanders training camp. He did not report for his physical, so he is officially holding out. This is a dicey one. Terry McLaurin is obviously an excellent wide receiver. He has been, prior to last year, a lone bright spot oftentimes for the Commanders offense. Again, prior to Jaden Daniels arriving in town last year, McLaurin has seen and been a part of some bad offenses, some lackluster offenses, some less than stellar quarterback play, and has still managed to put up decent numbers. generally speaking, over the course of his career. Ended up with over 1,000 yards and 13 receiving touchdowns last year with Jaden Daniels. Was his clear-cut alpha at wideout as they made their improbable run to the NFC Championship game. Now McLaurin is holding out, wanting more money. The team is clearly resistant to give it to him. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a holdout. So we'll see how long this goes into camp. These are always dicey situations. Sometimes it works itself out, and the top players that end up in contract squabbles, contract disputes going into a season, they can ultimately overcome it because they're that good. There are oftentimes other times when a holdout does negatively affect a player. You do lose those opportunities, those valuable reps in practice. Even if it's a guy in an offense, the personnel that you're familiar with, that you're comfortable with, that you've played and worked with for a couple of years. This time matters. The getting cadences down, the reps matter. The terminology that is different this year than it was last year, the little details. Again, this stuff doesn't matter as much for a player of Terry McLaurin's caliber, but the last thing you want is a distraction. And when we're making our picks, when we're building our teams, when we're putting our fantasy football rosters together, our lineups together, we want full confidence in the guys that we end up selecting. We want as little doubt as possible when selecting these guys, when picking these guys. And so when we are nitpicking, when we are looking at, do I take player A versus player B? These types of things matter. The contract distraction matters when making these calls. So Terry McLaurin is a little bit more of a, scary, for, pun intended, scary Terry. He's a little bit more scarier of a pick in the third round because there's now a little less certainty with him given the situation and him officially holding out. So Terry's great. We'll see how long this lasts. We'll see how long this holdout lasts. But as of right now, you have to proceed with caution with Terry McLaurin at best. And then Darren Waller was placed on the PUP list. I mean, again, Waller unretired, was traded by the Giants to the Miami Dolphins after the Dolphins traded Jonnu Smith to the Steelers. Waller is a late round flyer at tight end in deep leagues. He is not on the radar in 10-team, 12-team, maybe even 14-team drafts. Maybe a 14-team draft for somebody who punts on tight end, but even then, I find it hard to believe that anybody outside of a 16-team league or larger finds themselves relying on Darren Waller in 2025. But he popped up on the news ticker, so might as well talk about it. Okay. I think that covers the news and notes. Happy to answer any questions around any pieces of information that I shared or anything in general that you guys may have. But if not, let's talk running back rankings. The top 12 rankings that I personally have for the 2025 season. I will timestamp this stream for anybody who sees it late. I'm happy to also cut it up into individual video segments if I feel like it, if that helps. Like maybe I don't talk about the number one RB in an individual video. There might not be a ton of discourse there, but I'm going to have certain players ranked in certain spots that you may disagree with, that consensus disagrees with. You may have a guy in your top 12 that I don't. I may have a guy in my top 12 that you don't want to touch. I may have a guy that you think is too low. I may have a guy that you think is too high. Happy to cut up this video or cut up this stream if the situation permits, if the situation calls for it. But let's go over top 12 running backs for the 2025 season. And if anybody has any questions or wants to challenge me on anything, I'm happy to talk through my thoughts here. Let's see. Let me add. So I'll when I go line by line, I'll update the ticker. I'll update the ticker with the running back that I'm talking about, to make it a little bit easier for visual purposes. All right. So, with that said, kicking off the top 12 running backs for the fantasy football season, I don't think there's a whole heck of a lot to go over here. It is chalky, and you may want to go Saquon at RB1 overall after what he did last year, but a lot of people have fine-tuned their strategy, understanding that last year is in the past and has very little, if any, bearing on this year. And so while Saquon is excellent, and I will get to him shortly because he's not too much farther down this list, I do have Bijan Robinson as my RB1 for the season, simply because he has the fewest warts. He is a locked and loaded workload, does Bijan. He has an ascending offense. There's a lot of optimism nationally for the Atlanta Falcons and, what Michael Penix may bring to the table. Bijan, there's a condensed target share, at least based on the small sample size that we saw last year. We can expect Bijan to continue to handle a significant receiving workload out of the backfield. So half PPR and PPR scoring has become more and more the standard in fantasy football. Not as many leagues play standard scoring anymore. Therefore, there is a value assigned to catching the football. Bijan does that at an elite level from the running back position. There is nothing to worry about from that perspective. So Bijan's workload is incredibly safe. He's got a good offensive line. The Falcons have a pretty good offensive line. And on the other side, they have a questionable defense. They did address their pass rush, their defensive line in the draft. They drafted 2 edge guys in the first round for them to hopefully shore up their pass rush and their defense as a whole. But they are 2 rookies. So, how likely is it that you can rely on 2 rookies to uplift what has been not a good defense the past couple of years, not even average. They have just not been good. They are a below average unit over the past couple of years. They are a beatable run defense. They are a beatable pass defense. Atlanta has struggled on the defensive side of the football for several years now. I do not necessarily think it's fair to put it on 2 rookies to fix all of that in one offseason. So we can expect Atlanta to score points. We can expect teams that are playing Atlanta to score points against them, which means the offense has to continue to keep pace and score points. Put up big plays, rack up and accumulate a lot of yards, and get in the end zone. Bijan Robinson, RB1. I do not really think there's a whole heck of a lot more to go over here. Because obviously there is risk. There's risk with 100% of players, right? But that's the fun of the game. That's the thrill of the game. The injury rate for NFL players, for football players in general, is 100%, right? Nobody can sit here and definitively say that any one guy is going to make it through the entire season unscathed. So you're looking for who has the fewest warts, who on paper looks the least likely to have those types of concerns. Bijan Robinson, at a young age, an elite generational level talent. He's still just 23 years old. He handled a significant workload last year, but not a gargantuan workload last year. They'll go back to the well with him in 2025. He's the RB1 going into the season. Saquon is the RB1 on Underdog Fantasy as of right now. Their ADPs are incredibly close. So it is a coin flip. You're going to have people who have Saquon over Bijan as RB1. But I think it's fair to say at this point, a lot of people, again, the industry has gotten a lot sharper. Saquon handled almost 500 touches last year. We've seen significant drop-offs from players that handle a significant workload from one year to the next. And Mike and Nino, what's going on, guys? I just saw a couple more comments. Thanks for popping in. I'm going to update my banner. So there is a consensus concern because Saquon handled almost 500 touches last year. And the wear and tear of a workload like that often bleeds into the following season. We see a dip in production from running backs frequently in these scenarios. That, I'm here to tell you now, that is not enough for me to move Saquon lower than RB2. I am putting Bijan RB1 because it is a concern. And, right, we're nitpicking between generational talents. Bijan's a generational talent. Saquon's a generational talent. So at this point, we're splitting hairs, right? We're nitpicking. Bijan didn't have almost 500 touches last year. Therefore, I give him the nod as overall RB1 coming into the season. But Saquon is still my RB2 coming into 2025. I get it. I already mentioned the significant workload concerns. He's also got random intangibles like, he's on the Madden cover, right? This is a real thing. Or you can, whether you're superstitious or you believe in the Madden curse or any curses, whatever have you, if you believe in all of that stuff, then yeah, you're probably not going to draft Saquon Barkley. If you have the second or third, or maybe even the first, if you have a top 3 pick in your redraft league and you're superstitious, then you're not going to draft Saquon because the Madden curse has proven to be a true Achilles heel for anybody who ends up on it. Knock on wood on that saying there. Hopefully, obviously, we never hope or wish for injury for anybody, but there is a weird trend with being the Madden cover guy and then following it up with a poor performance the following year. It's not foolproof. It doesn't always happen, but it does seem to particularly happen to running backs. So if you're superstitious, okay, fine. There is enough there where it's like, okay, is this actually really a thing? For the purpose of just purely putting out rankings and objectively looking at situations, I can't possibly look as a commentator on the situation, as someone who is putting out and producing rankings and giving content for you guys. I cannot possibly, in good faith, look at the history of the Madden curse and based on that alone tell you that I'm not drafting Saquon Barkley. The workload concerns, sure, I'll give you that one. That is a legitimate concern. We've seen that hamper players from one year to the next. I am here to tell you, though, I am not going to allow myself to worry about these types of things if these are the warts that we are talking about for a generational player. And that's what Saquon Barkley is. He is a generational player. He is a generational talent. And oh, by the way, he is in the best system that a running back could ask for in the NFL, if not one of the best, top 2 at a minimum. The Eagles have the best offensive line in football. That didn't change. They did lose Mekhi Becton to the Los Angeles Chargers, so boost for the Chargers, slight downgrade for the Eagles. More than a slight downgrade. Becton was quite good for them last year. But the pillars of that line are still in place. Jordan Mailata is excellent. Landon Dickerson is excellent. Cam Jurgens is excellent. And Lane Johnson is a future Hall of Famer. The structure there is in place. Jalen Hurts has been the talk of the offseason when it comes to quarterbacks recently. I won't get into that. But what I will say is I don't worry as much about rushing quarterbacks vulturing work from running backs when the running back is a generational prospect. Yes, Hurts will vulture work. He will run. He will take carries away from Saquon on RPOs and, all the misdirection stuff. Jalen Hurts will take opportunities away from Saquon here and there. But the scheme, that scheme favors Saquon because teams can't key on a running back when the quarterback can run as well as someone like Hurts does. And even if you do key on him, we saw it in the Super Bowl, you can throw the ball to Saquon Barkley. And that might actually be where Saquon's usage gets a little alleviated this year. The Eagles are going to have some question marks on defense coming into the season. They lost a lot of free agents. They still have good players on defense, but they lost a couple of guys to free agency. So there may be some question marks about how good the defense is, especially early on in the year. If they're giving up points, they'll throw the ball to Saquon. Saquon's receiving numbers were down last year, but that's because he had a Derrick Henry-like season running the ball. 2,000 rushing yards. That'll do that. And you won't care if he catches a single pass if he's running for 2,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. Now, are we projecting 2,000 rushing yards? No, we can never project 2,000 rushing yards for any one player. But what we can project is that a team that is looking to go back-to-back in Super Bowl victories is going to continue to lean on their generational player who they did extend. They did a contract extension with him this offseason. Some of that might have been, thanks for everything you did. We got the ring. Congratulations. Some of it might have been related to that. But at the end of the day, this is a business and a what have you done for me lately business. The Eagles wouldn't have given that money to Saquon if they didn't intend to continue to rely on him. Like the Ravens did with Derrick Henry. The Ravens extended Derrick Henry this offseason. That's not for, you were awesome for us last year, man. We expect to continue to be able to lean on you for the next couple of years. That's what that commitment says. It is a reward. It's a reward, but it's also, you're awesome, and we're going to expect excellence from you. We're going to continue to expect excellence from you, and we want you to continue to be the elite level player that we are paying you to be. Saquon in this elite system remains my RB2, despite the concerns about workload from last year and any other intangibles like the Madden thing. We are swinging for the fences in fantasy football every time. We are always playing for upside. We're not playing for singles. We're playing to hit our picks out of the park. Saquon is a play to hit your pick out of the park, despite the workload concerns from last year. I am drafting Saquon Barkley, second or third overall. I'll take Bijan ahead of him. The question comes down to Jahmyr Chase. I won't get into those nitty-gritty details. This is just running back rankings right now. But basically, if it's standard scoring, you're drafting Saquon. If it's full PPR, I could understand wanting to draft Jahmyr Chase. Half PPR, I would probably lean Saquon slightly just because of the importance of an elite level RB1 during the redraft season. Saquon is my RB2, and I am not worried about workload concerns from last year. If your league mates are worried about workload concerns from last year and he slides to that 104, 105, 106 spot, you take that and you run all the way to the bank. Saquon, RB2 for this year. I'm not overthinking this and worrying about last year's workload, not when it pertains to a generational player. I spent a lot of time on Saquon, so I am going to move to my RB3. And I see questions in the chat. I will get to questions. Let me just get to a good spot where I've run through some decent running back rankings here, and we can talk shop on any AMA stuff. This one might be a little controversial. And we're splitting hairs here. In full PPR, I would probably say Jahmyr Gibbs is my RB3, but the guy that I have at RB3 is actually a solid threat in PPR leagues as well. There's a lot of risk here, but there's also a ton of reward. Christian McCaffrey is my RB3 coming into the 2025 season over Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, I just got done talking about how it's very difficult to trust San Francisco after last year. After everything that went down last year, the 49ers were sneaky with their information, with their medical information, with their injury updates throughout this time last year, through the preseason, through the early start of the regular season. They were not totally forthcoming with information about Christian McCaffrey's health, and it cost us. It cost McCaffrey owners probably your season. You might have made the playoffs, but you didn't have the guy who was the consensus 101 in drafts last year, and therefore it made it. You were fighting an uphill battle from the start, especially if you didn't end up getting Jordan Mason going into week 1 last year. You may have gotten him, but if you missed out, you probably, honestly, if you drafted Christian McCaffrey and missed out on Jordan Mason, you probably missed the playoffs. You would have had to have a miraculous draft and waiver wire navigation throughout the season to overcome something like that, which was unforeseen and nobody's fault, except for San Francisco failing to disclose important medical information. That being said, the reports are that McCaffrey is, in fact, fully healthy now this year. Kyle Juszczyk said he's fully healthy, and he's looking back to himself. And the 49ers, quite frankly, they need him to soak up a lot of volume. Deebo Samuel is gone. He will not be vulturing rushing production anymore. Jordan Mason, his backup from last year, is gone. He's with Minnesota now. Brandon Ayuk is recovering from a major injury suffered last year and does not appear ready or like he will be ready to start the season. Ricky Pearsall, hopefully this is minor, but he's on the PUP list with a hamstring injury. He's expected to come off of it in the coming days. The PUP list during training camp is not the same thing as the PUP list during the season. The PUP list, players can come off of it at any time at this time of the offseason, whereas if you're placed on the PUP list during the season, you have to miss a minimum of 4 weeks. The rules for the PUP list now are different from they are in season. So while it stinks to see players go on the PUP list, especially guys that you like and you think you're targeting and you want to invest in, it's not as bad as if they are put on the PUP list during the year. Hopefully Pearsall comes off of it in a couple of days. They need him. On top of them needing Christian McCaffrey, again, no more Deebo, no more Ayuk, Jawan Jennings. There were rumors he requested a trade. John Lynch came out, I think, earlier today saying he actually didn't request a trade, so who the hell knows what's going on there. But if there's any smoke to that, that's something to monitor. And again, now Pearsall, hopefully it's a minor thing, but he is on the PUP list and might miss a couple of days of camp here. All that to say, pretty much the 49ers are down to George Kittle and like a bag of wishes. They need Christian McCaffrey. And this is a team that still, I think, expects to compete for a Super Bowl. They believe they have a franchise quarterback in Brock Purdy. They invested in him. They still have good players, elite players on defense when healthy. This is a team that expects to make a title run. You need a healthy Christian McCaffrey in order for that to happen. And I do not believe they would have let Jordan Mason go. Or did they trade him? It was a trade, right? To Minnesota. It wasn't like an outright free agent sign. Yeah, they traded San Francisco did Jordan Mason to Minnesota. So, that could be a couple of things. It could be a vote of confidence for Isaac Guerendo. They like Isaac Guerendo as Christian McCaffrey's backup. But I think, more importantly, I think that is a pretty clear sign that they feel better about Christian McCaffrey's prospects to play, be ready, week 1, full go, no restrictions for the start of their season. That, I think, is what the true story is here. So, we're splitting hairs. Jahmyr Gibbs is my RB4. It's so close. And it's totally fair to make Jahmyr Gibbs your RB3 overall. And some people may even have him higher than that. Jahmyr Gibbs is dynamic. He's explosive. He is multiple years younger than Christian McCaffrey, and that is always a major factor. So I have no problems with putting Jahmyr Gibbs over Christian McCaffrey in your preseason running back rankings. The difference between the two of them is this. I believe Christian McCaffrey, when healthy, still has overall RB1 upside, and that is the reward. He's high risk. There's definitely plenty of concerns, especially after what happened last year. But Christian McCaffrey has overall RB1 upside finish. I think David Montgomery prevents Jahmyr Gibbs from overall RB1 upside. Top 5? Yes. Top 3? Yes. RB1 overall? I think that's a tougher task, not because of Jahmyr Gibbs' talent, but because David Montgomery is still there. And the Lions lost Frank Ragnow to retirement. And they also lost Ben Johnson, offensive coordinator, who moved on to become the head coach of the Bears. So that's the splitting hairs. Again, I'll repeat this multiple times. When we're talking about studs, top 5 bona fide awesome players at their respective position, we are splitting hairs. These are nitty-gritty differences because we got to rank somebody. I'm not going to cop out and say this guy's 3A and this guy's 3B. That doesn't help anybody. So if I have to make a clear-cut decision, I got to rank this guy ahead of this guy. These small little details and intangibles are why I put McCaffrey over Gibbs. Gibbs is safer while still being an explosive, dynamic playmaker. That's a rare statement to say. You would usually say that guy's ranked ahead of the riskier guy. But Christian McCaffrey, when healthy, no more Debo, no more Jordan Mason, and they have questions in the receiving game, so McCaffrey could catch a ton of balls. McCaffrey, I think, has RB1 overall upside. It would take a David Montgomery injury for Jahmyr Gibbs to have RB1 overall upside. Top 5, yes. Top 3, yes, for Jahmyr Gibbs. Top 1, I think David Montgomery holds him back. It has nothing to do with Gibbs being awesome because Jahmyr Gibbs is awesome. But David Montgomery is also a damn good running back who is probably going to continue to vulture opportunities, especially close to the goal line, on or near the goal line. That's the difference. That's all. So I guess I kind of did RB3 and RB4 together. Jahmyr Gibbs is my RB4. It is super close. It is super close. But a healthy David Montgomery keeps him at 4 on the rankings. A lot of people are going to have Gibbs ranked 3. Some people might have him ranked 2. I don't know that there's going to be too many people that have him ranked ahead of Bijan just because, again, David Montgomery. But there will be people who have Gibbs over Saquon. I have Saquon ahead of Gibbs. There will be others who have Gibbs ahead of Saquon because of the workload questions based on Saquon's role last year. So, splitting hairs. If you prefer Gibbs, the younger, more explosive player, I don't blame you. My thing with Christian McCaffrey is if he's healthy, he has that backfield to himself. No Debo, no David Montgomery-esque level player. And the 49ers have a lot of question marks in their receiving core. Okay, I'm going to keep it moving. I did talk about the Madden curse just now about Saquon. If you want to rewind and hear my thoughts about Saquon, I will also be timestamping this live stream after it ends so you can listen to each segment about each running back. I did talk about the Madden curse just now about Saquon. The Cliff Notes are, I'm not letting that get in the way. I'm not letting myself be worried about the Madden curse. Those are the Cliff Notes. But I have more thoughts if you want to rewind if you missed it. I will just quickly put up Jahmyr Gibbs on the ticker as my RB4. It's airtight, super close to Christian McCaffrey. I'm probably one of very few people who have Gibbs lower than RB3 overall. Coaching and personnel changes again. Ben Johnson, the loss of Frank Ragnow along the offensive line. That's a big loss at the center position. And then, again, Montgomery still looms to vulture touchdowns. Gibbs, one of the most explosive players at the position. I know he's awesome. People are going to have him probably as high as RB2 in their rankings. I have him as the RB4. My RB5. This one's gonna, I don't think I'm ruffling too many feathers. I don't want to disrespect one of the GOATs at the position. His name will be coming up shortly, but I do have a rookie next up at RB5, and there's really only one name from this rookie class. It's Ashton Jeanty. I have Jeanty at the RB5 over Derrick Henry, who is the RB6. And again, these two, you could flip-flop them. If you want to go chalk and go Derrick Henry, I understand. He's in a great situation. He's in a great scheme. And he's a generational talent. I'll take Jeanty here. The Raiders have improved their offensive personnel. Not as good as the Ravens. If you want to take the better offense, if you want to take the proven player in the better offense, then Derrick Henry is your guy here. I guess I'm leaning in on the generational prospect, the fresh legs, I guess. And I don't mean to sound hypocritical on that because Jahmyr Gibbs has the fresher legs than Christian McCaffrey in my RB3 versus 4 rankings, but I already outlined that. Jahmyr Gibbs has a David Montgomery problem, at least right now. In this instance, I'll go Jeanty, though, at RB5. The Raiders invested in him with the 6th overall pick. They improved the offensive line. They improved the offense in general by acquiring Geno Smith, who has quietly been a pretty good quarterback in Seattle, even though they haven't enjoyed a ton of team success with him. The defense hasn't been great. The offensive line in Seattle has been pretty bad. So, there were other factors holding that team back as a whole. But Geno Smith, in spite of that, put up some pretty good numbers at quarterback, reunites with Pete Carroll in Vegas. So this offense should be a lot better than they have been for the past couple of years. Jeanty is, I don't want to keep saying generational, but he is. By the metrics, by the numbers, Ashton Jeanty is a generational prospect. And if you draft a player, especially a running back, 6th overall, he better be, right? Otherwise, that is a horrendous use of resources. But we saw it on the field last year. The data all it indicates and suggests it. The advanced statistics. Jeanty is a generational prospect with the elite draft capital and a team desperate for running back help. This should be a good offense, better offense at least than what they were last year, in a division where they have to keep pace, they have to score points. All of these teams are better than them. The Raiders are going to need to maximize their best players. Jeanty is officially one of their best players on offense now, along with Brock Bowers. 300-plus opportunities should be coming his way, and a locked and loaded RB1 season should be coming along with it just based on volume alone. there are some question marks. Again, Derrick Henry is Derrick Henry. He's King Henry for a reason. He is my RB6. I have him just underneath Jeanty. And I expect the Ravens scheme to still be excellent, for Lamar to continue to be for Henry to be a huge benefactor of Lamar at quarterback, and vice versa, Lamar being a huge benefactor of having Henry as his running back. I will take the fresh legs in this specific scenario. I will take the younger guy who we expect 300 plus opportunities coming his way because there's not much behind him on the depth chart. Talking about Jeanty and the investment the team made in him. And also, this is a Pete Carroll. This is a Pete Carroll-led offense. Pete Carroll is notorious from his time in Seattle, running the ball. He believes in a run-first approach on offense. So the style of play that we can expect from the Raiders leans into utilizing and maximizing Jeanty year one. Right now, you can have him around the end of the first round. Again, it's going to depend on who values what in your league. Henry is going right around that area as well. Henry's obviously the proven player. All he does is churn out monster seasons. I have no reason to believe he won't churn out another monster season. But also, the Ravens, and this was a story last year, and it kind of got put to bed because of the workload that King Henry ended up with. The Ravens are a team with Super Bowl aspirations, and they have some experienced vets behind Derrick Henry. They have Justice Hill, who is a decent change of pace player. They're getting Keaton Mitchell back after he suffered a serious injury. It was the end of the 2023 season. Did he miss all of 2024? I think he missed all of 2024. He wasn't a factor. They expect to get him back this year and expect him to be a factor. So, again, we're nitpicking, we're splitting hairs. Do they back off of Derrick Henry a little bit to try to keep him fresh? Do they mix Hill in 2-minute drill? Again, that seems likely. Do they mix Keaton Mitchell in a little bit to give them a little bit of a change of pace boost there? Could happen. So these are the minor questions, whereas with the Raiders, Jeanty's probably not coming off the field. They have every reason to give him all of the work that he can handle. So I have Jeanty as my RB5. And yeah, I see some chatter in the chat. I would go Saquon over Gibbs. I would go Saquon over McCaffrey. And depending on the scoring, if it's full PPR, I'm more likely to want to go Jefferson or Lamb over Gibbs. And honestly, if those guys go ahead of Saquon, then Saquon is an excellent consolation prize at the 105. I would go Jefferson or Lamb in full PPR. Especially if you start 3 wide receivers. If you only start 2, then there's a little bit more of an argument for McCaffrey or Gibbs. If you don't want to draft McCaffrey, then there's a little bit more of an argument for Gibbs if you only start 2 wide receivers. But if you start 3, I would probably go Jefferson or Lamb, and I may go one of those 2 guys anyway, even if you only start 2 receivers. They are that good in full PPR. All right, I talked about Jeanty. I mean, it's just generational prospect, 6th overall pick, run-first offense. Geno Smith is not vulturing rushing production. I'll take Jeanty overall, slightly over Derrick Henry. That being said, Derrick Henry is my RB6. Feels a little... I always feel like I'm disrespecting Derrick Henry every year. And every year, he proves me wrong. I mean, I had Derrick Henry last year in a league, and you know, it was amazing. 1,900 rushing yards. He had like 15 touchdowns. He had a monster Derrick Henry season in the best scheme and offense of his career. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens offense and the Ravens offensive line was far superior to any scheme that he played in when he was in Tennessee. Henry made that offense look so much better than it actually was. The offensive line regularly was not that good. It was okay at best, and it was below average at worst. In an elite scheme, in an elite offense, Henry came through in a big way, and not much has changed. Not much has changed. So if you want to draft Henry over Jeanty, the proven player, the stud that he is, that's fine. Full PPR leagues, he's always going to be a little bit more dicey because he doesn't catch the ball, but he makes up for it by running for 15, 16, 1,700 rushing yards and getting 12 touchdowns on the ground. He comes through by just being an awesome freaking running back. One of, if not the best running backs of this era, Derrick Henry. That's fair to say. At this point, he's got the longevity. All he does is churn out monster seasons. They will remain, they were a little bit more of a pass-happy offense last year, moving from Greg Roman as offensive coordinator to Todd Monken. So that, I guess, should remain somewhat in place. But the bread and butter of this Ravens offense is Lamar and Derrick Henry causing nightmares for opposing defensive coordinators about how do you defend this backfield. And again, Baltimore committed to Henry with a contract extension this offseason. So while I did mention Justice Hill and Keaton Mitchell, and I like both of those guys, I think they're both good change of pace options. They could eat into Henry's workload a little more than whatever Vegas has behind Ashton Jeanty. Maybe Sincere McCormick, who had a decent little showing last year, but they're not gonna take Ashton Jeanty off the field that much to give work to the other guys they have on that roster. Justice Hill and Keaton Mitchell for Baltimore are solid players, and especially Hill in the 2-minute offense will probably come on the field in favor of Henry. So this is where we're splitting the hairs a little bit. Nevertheless, Derrick Henry's a stud. He's in a great situation, probably the first or second best situation in the league, along with Philly, as far as Lamar and what he brings to the table, all his intangibles as a quarterback, the Ravens scheme, the Ravens offensive line, their personnel. It's all set up for Henry to have tons of success. The one nitpicky detail would be, I think Baltimore has more competent options to spell Henry than Vegas does for Jeanty, and that's why I have Jeanty ranked 5 and Henry 6. All right, moving on. My RB7. This one, I like his talent a lot. He still feels kind of volatile, even though he did quell some concerns about durability and the like last year. But, there are some red flags that we want to make sure we address, but I cannot discount. And, I can't dismiss just how awesome and how talented Devon Achane is. He is my RB7. Now, The thing that Achane has working against him of the top 12 running backs is Miami probably has the worst offensive line of anybody on this list. So that in a vacuum, that holds Achane back. However, he is such an elite weapon in the passing game that he can make it so that issue is a little bit more obsolete. So maybe between the tackles as a runner, we don't get as excited about Achane, even though he is an explosive playmaker. But his ability as a receiver, and we expect him to get a lot of checkdowns. One, because we saw it last year with Tua. We hope that offense opens up a little bit more, maybe back to their 2023 levels, throwing the ball to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, because that's just more fun for fantasy and for viewing pleasure. But Devon Achane probably is going to get a lot of dump-offs as Tua continues to try to get the ball out quickly as a scheme adjustment / alleviate any concussion concerns, which he has a lot of them. Jonnu Smith is gone, traded to Pittsburgh, replaced with an unretired Darren Waller. So I think it's fair to say that Achane's target share is not only safe, but may even go up. We could be looking at when healthy, Alvin Kamara level usage, maybe not effectiveness, but usage as a receiver out of the backfield for Achane when Tua is healthy as well. There's a lot of factors for that to go right, but if Achane hits his ceiling, that's what we're looking at here. Miami's going to have to get him used in the receiving game because he's elite at that, and their offensive line isn't very good. So we can't rely on them to consistently open big holes, big lanes for Achane to run through as a runner. You're going to need to get creative with him as a receiver, which they've already done that. We've seen that happen, and we've seen it happen with success. So therefore, we can expect it to continue. And again, he alleviated some durability concerns because he played through the season. He played through some injuries last year, but he didn't miss time. It might be aggressive, but you could take Achane over a guy like Derrick Henry in PPR leagues. So if you have full PPR scoring, I may rank Achane over Henry. I guess I'm using half PPR as the default here, but I'll caveat if I would take this guy over that guy depending on your scoring. This is one of those times. Standard scoring, Derrick Henry. Half PPR, probably still Derrick Henry because he's that good. But full PPR, I think that's where the scoring favors a guy like Achane. So he still has a good number of question marks, right? How good is Miami's offense? How good is Mike McDaniel as a play caller? Will Tua stay healthy? And will that offensive line be anything better than average? Those are all real legitimate questions, facing Devon Achane. The scheme, the health of the guys around him, Achane's health himself. Again, he gutted out and played in. He didn't miss time. He didn't miss any significant time, but he was playing through injuries last year. Tua's health, obviously, a major concern, and their offensive line is, on paper, not very good. But he's a dynamic, explosive player, one of the fastest players in the league, and he's an elite pass-catching threat out of the backfield. I have him as my RB7, and I would probably move him up as my RB6 in full PPR. Okay. The final five. This is, I think, where the conversation maybe will start to deviate a little bit, and it just kind of depends on personal preference and what you believe from last year to this year, but we'll get into it. Because now we're starting to get into the realm. This is the area where it's like, okay, these are the guys where it's like they have some red flags that we maybe want to consider. As far as RB1s go, they're still RB1s. We expect the world of them. We expect high performances and strong seasons from these guys. But now we're getting into the range of like, Okay, what's wrong with him? Okay, with that said, my RB8 is Jonathan Taylor. And I grappled with this a little bit. I thought about ranking a couple of other guys ahead of him, but I ultimately decided to go with Taylor, who is still only just 26 years old, and I think still an elite talent. Maybe not a generational talent, but an elite talent at the position. An elite is still, I mean, he's the RB8. I'm expecting a top 10 finish from him at the position with top 5 upside. Right? Quarterback situation stinks. Talked about that a little bit at the beginning of the show when we were going over news and notes. That is obviously not any fun. Maybe it doesn't hurt the running back as much, but bad quarterback play means in all likelihood, fewer scoring opportunities. That doesn't help anybody. But the Colts have a pretty good offensive line. Their offensive line is pretty solid, and Taylor is a safe bet when healthy for anywhere from like 12 to 1,400 rushing yards and let's say 10 touchdowns. They will run this offense through him, and he could catch a few more passes this year if Daniel Jones is the quarterback. We don't know who the quarterback is going to be. Again, it could be Daniel Jones week 1, and then maybe he starts week 2 and struggles, and Anthony Richardson gets in there and finishes the game. And then maybe Richardson starts week 3, and then maybe week 4 he struggles and they put Daniel Jones back in. I would hope they find some level of continuity, and that's not the situation, but it could be. It could be. It's anyone's guess what happens with the Colts quarterback situation this year. We hope for stability. We hope it's Anthony Richardson. He's the guy that's supposed to be this team's franchise quarterback. He's the guy that should be getting the first team reps that he so desperately needs and just getting game experience, getting game action out there. But there's a lot of questions as to whether he has earned it to this point and whether he, I guess, deserves it at this point. I think he deserves it from the perspective of the Colts owe it to themselves to truly find out what they have in him. He's still incredibly young, and he has played so few snaps. If they've already given up on him, then, what I'm saying here doesn't matter. But you have to imagine they have a vested interest in truly finding out, what can this guy do? Can he get better? Young players improve all of the time. It's easy to call a young player a bust if they have anything other than a good first season or a good 1 or 2 seasons in their first couple of years in the league. You're hoping for at least one good season in their first 2 years. Richardson hasn't had that yet. So it's easy to label a guy like that a bust, but he's still incredibly young. And he has an opportunity to grow into the role. Will the Colts give him that chance? I don't know. So the murky quarterback situation, I'm not going down that rabbit hole too far. Again, this is a conversation about the top running backs this year. The murky quarterback situation keeps Taylor from going any higher in the rankings. I have him at RB8. I can't possibly put him any higher than that. The quarterback situation stinks. But the offensive line is decent, and this offense should run through Taylor no matter what it looks like. If it's Richardson, we have to hope for Richardson to improve, because otherwise that might take away from Taylor. It might take rushing production away from Taylor, and he may not catch a ton of passes with Richardson. If it's Daniel Jones, yeah, the offense might not be great, but less rushing production probably gets vultured. Jones can run. We all know that. He can run, but he's probably not going to run as much as Richardson would run. So less rushing production would get vultured, and you would expect a little bit more competency in checkdowns to Taylor, and therefore, with Jones, he might be more likely to catch more passes. So we might be rooting for Daniel Jones from a fantasy perspective to be the quarterback as it pertains to Jonathan Taylor. But there may be some inconsistencies there as far as who actually plays quarterback all season long for them. So, like Jonathan Taylor, there are some questions about his offense that hold him back, but I still have him as my RB8. We can expect an RB1 finish from a guy who has proven to handle a significant workload in the past and is still just 26 years old. The offense should run through him no matter what. Can I name 6 quarterbacks with 2 Super Bowls before the 2000s? Oh man, I'm going to have to think about that. Before the 2000s? I was not primed to be prepared to answer NFL history today, but I can give it a whirl. I mean, Joe Montana, John Elway, Troy Aikman. There's 3, right? Joe Montana, John Elway, Troy Aikman. Bart Starr? Did Bart Starr get to, or was that still the NFL championship when the Packers won those? I thought it was Bart. I thought Bart Starr won Super Bowls. That's a real long time ago. I'm trying to think of other teams who won multiple. Bradshaw, Terry Bradshaw. I think I'm at 5. Tell me I'm at 5. And then there's a 6th one. I'm gonna have to think about. Joe Montana, John Elway, Troy Aikman, Bart Starr. If the Packers, if it was called the Super Bowl when Bart Starr played quarterback, versus the NFL championship, and Terry Bradshaw, and then there's a 6th one. It wasn't Tom Brady. Tom Brady didn't win his 2nd one until after the 2000s started, so it's not Brady. I gotta think about it. All right, I answered most of the question, I think, so I'm gonna keep it moving to my running back rankings. But I think I got 5. Someone check me on that. Did Bart Starr win? Did he win? Did Bart? I'll just YouTube, or I'll Google it. Yeah, he won 2. All right, I was right. Okay, this doesn't count as cheating because I looked up the answer to a question that I had the answer. I was just confirming, did he win a Super Bowl or did he win an NFL championship? He did, in fact, win 2 Super Bowls. So there's one guy that I'm missing. I'll think on it. But I got Montana, Elway, Aikman, Bradshaw, and Bart Starr. If there's a 6th one, I'm gonna have to think about that one. But we'll put a pin in it. All right, I got through my RB8. We will now go through my RB9. I wanted to rank this guy higher, but I was having a hard time doing it. So I guess that means that I quite like him, and I'm perfectly happy targeting him if I get a chance. And that's Chase Brown. Chase Brown is one of the more exciting options as far as low-end RB1s go for me. I couldn't put him ahead of anybody else. The other names were they just felt too, some combination of proven and safe. And I don't want to say that Chase Brown isn't safe. I just had a hard time putting him above there's other names that I like a little bit more than him, but that to say I like Chase Brown a lot, and therefore, because I think a lot of people, this is the range where they're going to have Chase Brown ranked, he's going to be a little bit cheaper, and if you can get him, he's a guy that I would like to target because I think he's in a situation to put up some big numbers. They appear, the Bengals, to be moving forward with Brown as their workhorse. He's only 5'9", so a few inches smaller than the prototype, but Achane is that size as well. Chase Brown's 210 pounds, so he's stocky. He offsets the fact that he's a little on the smaller side by being stocky. And he should catch a ton of passes. This is the key kicker here. Chase Brown should get a lot of work catching dump-offs from Joe Burrow as their offense continues to likely, maybe not guaranteed, but likely to play in a lot of shootouts in 2025. This is a Bengals offense that was downright horrendous last year, and they may get worse this year. They are a rare situation where they may go from worse to whatever's worse than worse. Like, Trey Hendrickson is not in camp seeking a new contract. It doesn't seem like him and the team are anywhere close to figuring out a number that they both feel good about, where Hendrickson gets his extension, the guaranteed money that he's looking for, and then he shows up in camp and gets in his work and gets in his reps. That does not appear to be headed to any type of resolution anytime soon. On top of that, their first-round pick, Jahmyr Stewart, left organized OTAs as a rookie earlier in the offseason because of issues with guaranteed money in his rookie contract. Or something like the Bengals want to withhold. They want to be able to withhold money that would otherwise be guaranteed to Stewart if he got hurt. It's basically language in the contract that they're trying to add that other teams didn't add, and Stewart doesn't want to be the guinea pig, the guy who gets slapped with this kind of penalty that other first-round picks aren't dealing with in their contract. So he walked out on the team in OTAs, and I don't think reported to training camp. Edge rusher, 16th, 17th overall pick in the draft. Like, this is their first round pick. This is a guy that they are relying on to help fix their atrocious defense from last year. This is something they have to fix. And he's not there. And neither is Trey Hendrickson, the NFL sack leader. So that's pretty much what it comes down to for Chase Brown. His role seems rock solid. Zach Moss was placed on the NFI list, and the guys behind him are Samaje Perine, who is an experienced vet, but he's 29 years old, and he's kind of boring. He's a solid player. He'll give you valuable veteran snaps and a valuable veteran presence, but he's not a game changer. He's a solid vet. And then they have Taj Brooks, right? He was a 6th-round pick for them, so he's interesting, right? But he's probably more of a developmental guy. This is a team that's going to lean on Chase Brown to lead their backfield. And on top of the perceived depth behind him, this defense is going to stink again. They're going to be in a ton of shootouts, which means Chase Brown is going to have to remain involved throughout the game and take a lot of work, handle a significant workload to help the Bengals offense keep pace with their opponents, because their defense is going to struggle to stop other opposing offenses, especially if they don't have Trey Hendrickson. He had 65 targets last year. He caught the ball 54 times. That's fantastic. On top of almost 230 carries. Brown's workload is huge, and we expect it to remain high as Moss continues to recover from a serious injury that he suffered last year. Samaje Perine is a solid, valuable veteran, but he's not going to take significant work away, and Taj Brooks is a developmental rookie. Chase Brown, RB9. I wish I could rank him higher, but I think it's, I feel a little bit more comfortable about the other guys ranked ahead of him. That being said, I like Chase Brown. Stock up on him, stock up on his situation, and I will be targeting him in the 3rd round, late 2nd, early 3rd round of redraft leagues. The final 3, 10 through 12. This one might come as a bit of a shock to some folks, but given the development, given what's going on, I can't ignore what is potentially emerging as a bell cow situation that we weren't expecting throughout the offseason, but it might happen. We don't know what's going on with this backfield just yet, but it is propelling one of the players forward. One of the players in this backfield forward into my RB1 list. He had previously been a steady RB2, but I think it's fair at this point to rank him as an RB1. And it is the rookie Omarion Hampton of the Los Angeles Chargers. This is where we're at with the Los Angeles Chargers. Najee Harris suffered an eye injury on the 4th of July. It was referred to as a superficial eye injury, which I guess means surface level. So maybe there wasn't like extensive damage done, which is good in theory, right? We don't know a whole heck of a lot yet, but that's just it. That's the problem here. We don't really know a whole heck of a lot of what is going on with Najee Harris. He reported to camp, but he is not really participating in practice right now, and we haven't received any specific concrete update on any progress that he's made. According to Hayden Winks, he works for Underdog Fantasy, Najee has been to not one but 2 different hospitals since the incident, which I can only assume, if true, I'm not the source, I'm not reporting anything, I'm just relaying information from another supposed source, that Najee Harris is potentially seeking multiple opinions about his eye injury. So there's a lot of gray area here. It's not clear how severe this thing is that's going on with Najee Harris. If Najee is fine, if this story is not a thing, if Najee's injury is not a thing, if his eyes are perfectly fine and there's no concerns or questions about his availability, Omarion Hampton is not making these rankings. He just isn't. Top 15? Maybe. Top 16 or 17, top 18, that might be a little bit fairer because we expect Najee to have a role. The Chargers targeted him in free agency and brought him in early. They want to run the ball with Najee and probably allow Hampton time to grow into a role and split opportunity with an experienced, polished veteran. But now we've got a questionable eye injury on what's going on with Najee Harris, and we aren't really sure what his availability is or when he's going to be able to practice. We don't really know what's going on with Najee Harris right now. So I'm at the point where we're saying screw it. If I have to put rankings out today, right now, I'm boosting Omarion Hampton up into the low-end RB1 tier. They drafted him with their first-round pick. They have a run-first approach on offense with Jim Harbaugh as the head coach and Greg Roman as the offensive coordinator. They've invested heavy in the offensive line over the past couple of years, and we expect it to be a good one. We expect it to be a good offense in general because Justin Herbert is the quarterback, so we can expect a solid amount of scoring opportunities for this team. And again, Hampton has the profile of a 3-down back. When you put it all together, I have to list him as a low-end RB1. The draft capital is there. The profile is there. The scheme and style and the run-first offensive approach is there. And now on top of that, Najee Harris has an eye injury that he suffered from, I guess, fireworks during a 4th of July incident, and nobody can sit here and tell us how severe it is, but he is missing practice time. Based on all of these details and what we know so far and what has transpired so far, I am willing and will boost Omarion Hampton up over some other names that have been consistently ranked RB1s throughout the season. I'm putting Hampton over those guys now. I have him currently listed as the RB10 with training camp starting. I believe he will move if nothing changes in this situation. I believe his ADP will move into the late second round, maybe early third of redraft leagues, and he will be going as an RB1 if Najee Harris's health does not improve. And right now, we don't have any indication one way or another what is going on. But the fact that he is not practicing is cause for concern for Najee, and therefore a boost for Omarion Hampton's prospects to be a little bit more of a bell cow sooner than later. So as of right now, as of the making of this live stream, as we open training camp, obviously things can change and fluctuate, but I am tentatively putting Omarion Hampton as a low-end RB1. He's my RB10. I can't think of that sixth quarterback who won 2 Super Bowls. I got Elway, I got Montana, I got Aikman, I got Starr, I got Bradshaw. I can't think of that sixth quarterback, and it's not Tom Brady because he got his Super Bowls. He got all but one of his Super Bowls after the 2000s, so I know it's not Brady. I don't know who the second quarterback is. I don't know. But I appreciate the the random football knowledge question. Feel free to keep them coming. Okay. My RB11 is a guy that I talked a little bit about during the news and notes segment of the stream, and that's Kyren Williams. Now, Kyren, again, is seeking a contract from the LA Rams. He wants a new contract. He feels like he should be paid what he's worth, and right now he isn't after 2 stellar seasons. Lots of volume, not too many explosive plays, but a solid amount of production, and RB1 finishes both years for fantasy. But he's at camp, and he's practicing, or he intends to practice. He's not holding out. He's not holding in. He's intending to practice, getting his reps, getting his work in, and cementing his status as the Rams' RB1. So we feel better about that. Despite the contract situation, we feel better about the fact that he is intending to practice. Practice will start this week. And there's not going to be an off, at least from the distraction perspective of him potentially not practicing. That's not a factor. That's not a thing here with Kyren Williams. At least he's practicing. He's not holding out or holding in. A lot's been made in the analytics world about Kyren. Again, the lack of explosive plays, but the team seems to like him. They seem to trust him. He's got a lot of production to show for the past couple of years, and I don't have any reason to believe that the Rams will move off of him as their, most productive runner of the past couple of years. Bringing him back, still young. I think he's only like 25 years old, and they have Super Bowl aspirations. They need him. They need Kyren Williams. They have Blake Corum and Jarquez Hunter behind him. Corum maybe takes a step forward. He showed very little as a rookie. Maybe he'll make a year 2 leap. Maybe he won't. We'll see. A year of experience can always help young players, so maybe Corum is better than he was last year. Last year, he showed very little. Hunter is a 4th-round rookie, I think. They took him in the 4th round, the Rams. And again, this team has Super Bowl aspirations. Do you really intend to have to rely on a 4th-round rookie? I would think not. We're probably looking at a bit of an uphill battle for Hunter to regularly contribute this year. Again, especially if we're not just talking about Kyren. If Blake Corum takes a year 2 leap, I say leap, like whatever that looks like, hopefully better than what he produced last year, which was not much. The point is, Corum and Hunter can't possibly be relied on in this backfield. Certainly not to lead the backfield, maybe to contribute and spell Kyren, hopefully be able to spell him here and there, but no more than that. This team needs Kyren. He is showing good faith by practicing, showing up, reporting, not holding out, not holding in, practicing with his teammates, getting himself ready for the season, and hopefully the contract situation sorts itself out before the start of the year. If it doesn't, that could be a slight cause for concern, maybe a bit of a red flag. Maybe Kyren picks up an injury here and there as he waits to get some more guaranteed money, and then maybe his availability over the course of the season is a little bit more hit and miss, and now we're dealing with a headache that we don't want to deal with. Got to let the situation play out. We are hoping for a contract situation. The fact that he is practicing or intends to practice, reported without any holdout issues, is good news. It's a good sign. So we can proceed with a little bit more optimism with Kyren Williams based on all of that. That's why I feel comfortable continuing to rank him as an RB1, a low-end RB1, a guy that you can get in the third round, a guy I'm not as excited about as Chase Brown. It feels weird to put a guy like Omarion Hampton over Kyren Williams, but based on recent trends, I feel inclined to do so. Kyren feels like a good target, middle of the third round. He probably doesn't fall too much farther past that in redraft leagues. But he's kind of boring, I guess. Again, he's not super explosive, so he may be viewed as kind of boring. I'll take boring in the form of, 250 touches, 11 to 1,200 scrimmage yards, and 10 touchdowns. Actually, last year he had more like 340 some odd opportunities. But my point is, even if that scales back a little bit to 260, 270 touches, maybe 1,200 to 1,300 scrimmage yards, 10, 11 touchdowns, 11 to 12 touchdowns, we'll take that. All right, and I'm going to wrap this up with the final RB rankings. Again, I will cut this live stream up rank by rank so you can hear my thoughts on each individual. You can skip ahead or skip back to certain spots in the stream to hear my thoughts on specific runners. So I'll make sure to timestamp this for anybody watching late or wants to run this back. But appreciate everybody coming in and hanging out today. I will be a little bit more consistent on the channel with the season fast approaching. All of wide receiver rankings on Thursday. We can continue to take AMA. I'm happy to take your questions, however many pop up, whether it's related to fantasy or strategy, or you just want to ask random history questions. I'm happy to take all of them. I can't think of that sixth quarterback from the question about the quarterbacks that won multiple Super Bowls, but I got 5 out of 6, so I feel pretty good about that. My final RB1 to round out the top 12 rankings, my top 12 rankings as we enter training camp. These are always subject to change. The vibes change. Obviously, we hope for no injuries. We hope for a clean bill of health for everybody, but we know that that's not likely to happen. Hopefully it happens, but we know how this goes. We've been around the block long enough. Obviously, these rankings are subject to change, but just as we approach training camp, the end of my RB1 rankings, he's a bit of a cult hero at this point. He's everyone's favorite running back, it seems. Bucky Irving is my RB12. Rounds out the RB1s. He beats out Breece Hall. I can talk a little bit about Breece maybe the next time we discuss running backs. But Bucky beats out Breece to earn the last spot in my redraft top 12 rankings for the 2025 season. Bucky would be going a little bit higher, and consensus is actually he is drafted ahead of Kyren Williams. He's drafted ahead of Omarion Hampton, and he's drafted ahead oftentimes of Chase Brown. And sometimes he's drafted ahead of Jonathan Taylor. So maybe I'm a little bit lower on Bucky Irving than consensus, but I do still have him listed as an RB1. Here are my thoughts. Bucky is excellent, right? Yards per carry, great. Yards after contact, great. He makes big plays happen. He's fun. He's a good player. He's awesome. And he seemingly took that job outright and is the team's RB1. I say seemingly because there are industry questions for some about how likely Bucky is to hold a bell cow role with the team. Rachaad White is still there. He's a not a good runner, but he's a solid receiver. And the team seems to like Sean Tucker. He is a solid runner. Rachaad White's the better receiver. He's not a good runner out of the backfield, but Sean Tucker is a solid runner, and the team seems to like him. So they probably in some way, shape, or form are going to get those other two guys involved. Bucky figures to be the 1A, a strong 1A, and the clear-cut guy for the Bucs. But there seems to be a line of thinking that those other guys are still going to have a bit of a role. Rachaad White's going to still have a bit of a role as a receiver. Sean Tucker is going to have a role as a change of pace runner. They like these guys. They especially Tucker. The team likes Sean Tucker. I'm sure they love Bucky Irving, but they like these other guys as well, and I'm sure they're going to find a role for these dudes. Here's the biggest thing for me as it pertains to the Bucs. There are question marks right now, and this could change. Hopefully it changes. But Tristan Wirfs, their elite stud offensive tackle, had knee surgery earlier this month. It was initially reported that he may start the season on the PUP list. Again, the PUP list for training camp is different from the PUP list during the season. If he goes on the PUP list during training camp, he can come off it at any time. If he goes on the PUP list to start the season, he's going to miss the first 4 weeks of the year. The initial report from, I believe it was Rick Stroud, he's one of the Bucs beat reporters, was that Wirfs was looking likely to land on the PUP list to start the season, not to start camp, to start the season. This knee surgery that he had in July could potentially force Wirfs to miss time to start the 2025 season. Now, Todd Bowles had his press conference today. A lot of the coaches and GMs had press conferences either yesterday or today as training camps start. Bowles said today that he feels like that Wirfs is going to come back sooner than later. But obviously that's ambiguous. We don't know if that means if he's going to be ready for week 1 or week 2 or week 3. We hope it's week 1, but we don't know today right now if it's week 1. If he goes on the PUP list, he's not back until week 5, and that's if he's 100% ready to come off the PUP list if he goes on the PUP list. So there's conflicting reports about the health of Tristan Wirfs right now. And make no mistake, this matters. For as awesome as Baker Mayfield is, for as awesome as Bucky Irving is, for as awesome as Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are, Tristan Wirfs is that team's best offensive player. He's that good. He's that good. He is a difference maker, a top 3 tackle in the National Football League. His loss, if it happens, would be a huge hit for the Bucs offense and their early season prospects. It would be probably almost expected for them to get off to a slower start relative to expectations if Tristan Wirfs has to miss time. That's how good he is. So, on one hand, the Tampa beat reporters initially said that Wirfs might have to miss time to start the season. And then Todd Bowles said, he might be ready sooner than later, and maybe he doesn't have to miss any time. So we cannot possibly determine where Tristan Wirfs is at as far as his health with the season still 6 weeks away. So for the purpose of, training camp, top 12 running back rankings, the uncertainty around Tristan Wirfs' health being primary, and the potential for Rachaad White and Sean Tucker to still maintain some roles that are a little bit more than nothing, is why I have Bucky Irving ranked still as an RB1. He's my RB12, but not as like the RB8 or 9 that you see other people ranking him as. Bucky is awesome. He's basically he's got like a cult following at this point in the fantasy community, and it's well deserved. Again, he came out of pretty much nowhere as a 4th round pick last year to blow up and finish, I think, as like the RB7 or 8. He's awesome. But maybe I'm holding against him that he's only done it for 1 year and these question marks are bound. I got to see him do it again before I rank him higher than the RB 9 or 10. And I have to know Tristan Wirfs is healthy before I rank him higher than RB 12. So Bucky's still great. I still have him as an RB1, but I do think he's being overdrafted a little bit right now because there are a couple of question marks I have about him. If I know Tristan Wirfs is healthy and is starting week 1 with no restrictions, then yeah, take Bucky Irving as the RB9. Take him as, if you believe in him that much, you might take him over Jonathan Taylor as the RB8. But there are questions about his role. Rachaad White is still there. Obviously, Bucky is better than Rachaad White, but Rachaad White is probably a little bit more of a better pass catcher. And again, the team likes Sean Tucker. I don't think Sean Tucker is just going away. Do I think Bucky is better than Sean Tucker? Yes. I think Bucky Irving is solidly better than Sean Tucker. But I think the team likes Sean Tucker and is going to find a way for him to stay involved in the offense. So between that and the uncertainty around Tristan Wirfs, I have to put Bucky Irving 12th. Not 8th. Not 9th, still an RB1, but right on that cusp. So, those are my top 12. Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, high risk, high reward, Jahmyr Gibbs, Ashton Jeanty, Derrick Henry at 6, Achane at 7. You could flip-flop those in PPR leagues. Jonathan Taylor at 8, Chase Brown at 9, Omarion Hampton at 10, Kyren Williams at 11, Bucky Irving at 12. Josh Jacobs, Breece Hall, they are right there. Josh Jacobs would probably be an RB1 if it weren't for this potential boost to Omarion Hampton's stock. I also have questions about how much volume and workload he's going to get with a healthy Jordan Love. And Breece Hall, disappointed last year relative to expectations. He was drafted as the RB4. I think he finished as the RB17. The team seems to like Braylon Allen. They seem to like Isaiah Davis. I think Breece Hall is better than both of those guys, but it's feeling like there could be a little bit of a committee brewing for the New York Jets, and they're also maybe just not going to be that good of a team. So I worry about him from that perspective, and I worry about his receiving volume. Breece Hall has always been an elite receiving back, but with Justin Fields in there, his receiving production may go down, probably will go down compared to if he still had Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. Justin Fields is very much like a one read and throw the ball type of quarterback. I think it's good news for Garrett Wilson. I'm not sure that Justin Fields as the full-time starter for all season for the Jets is good news for Breece Hall, specifically as a receiver, and that's going to hurt his fantasy numbers. Josh Jacobs probably deserves to be ranked as an RB1, especially what he did last year. I don't quite have him in there. Maybe my tune changes if we get information about Najee Harris and that impacts Omarion Hampton. If we get news about Kyren Williams and his contract situation, if we get more negative news about Tristan Wirfs or anything else about the Bucs offense, maybe I drop Bucky Irving down and Josh Jacobs makes his way in. If the Colts quarterback situation spirals out, maybe I find a way to put Josh Jacobs over Jonathan Taylor. That might be a little aggressive, but that's how Josh Jacobs could re-enter the RB1 conversation. It's still only the end of July. There's a lot of wiggle room for these rankings to change, but with training camp upon us, I felt it was appropriate to kind of get the tires kicking, start thinking about how you want to rank these running backs, and maybe my list helps you build your own list, your own rankings that you feel more comfortable about than what I laid out here for you today. But that's the idea. I give you my thoughts, I lay them out, take them, apply them however you want, make adjustments, and that's the beauty of the game. You'll take guys that I like and drop them down. Maybe you'll take guys that I like and drop them up because you're convinced on my data, or not data, my analysis, my thoughts, the data that I present, not the data that I create, the data that I present. And maybe you build your own rankings based on whatever I share, and you just use that as a blueprint, as a template. Either way, it's meant to be informative and helpful one way or another as we begin to shape and mold our strategy for our drafts as they approach in about a month's time. I will be a little bit more consistent on here with the season fast approaching Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I will come back with my training camp top 12 wide receivers. Be sure to tune in for that, and I will be back next week as well. As we continue to move through training camp, the preseason gets underway and the season begins to ramp up. But that'll do it for me tonight. Appreciate you guys coming in and hanging out. Thanks for the time. Special shout out to Greg. He was one of the members that I saw. Members, again, get special shout outs as one of their perks. If you're interested in perks about becoming a member, you can read about those in the first link in the description of this stream and all streams and videos on this channel. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you again for tuning in. I will cut up this video and timestamp it so that you can see my running back rankings laid out on the ticker. Thanks, everybody.